an entrepreneur is like a roller coaster ride. One minute you're diving towards the ground, the next soaring to heights. So be bold, be brave, be honest and kind. Don't take any shit and stay focused of mind. Welcome to my show. I'm Gisele, Littrell, your honest CEO.
Hello and welcome back to Honest CEO. I'm your host Gisele Littrell, and I am excited to have a friend and guest here again today. Maybe just all of the business owners in Erie are actually my friends, which I thoroughly enjoy. We have known each other possibly for 6 or 7 years now, and I know this woman has been a mover and a shaker in our town. Right alongside me, we have seen each other grow and develop businesses. And so I am super excited to welcome Rebecca Styn with me today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. So first off, Rebecca, I don't think I even know your entire background story. Because usually we get together and talk about business.
Yeah. You
It's
probably
not even
don't need to.
Who were you when you were growing up?
Right.
We don't even cover that. We're just like, what are you dealing with employee issues this week, you know? So I want you to kind of give our listeners a little bit of a background story, who you are, where you've come from, and what's inspired you.
Yeah, so my background's really very broad. I mean, it's been a journey, and I've been trying to figure it out along the way, right? So I started actually, undergrad was music. I was going to be a performance major.
I was going to be a vet.
Oh, perfect. Right.
We're all following our
Right,
dreams,
right,
apparently.
yeah. And then, like, 2 years into this, I was like, I can't sit in a studio all day and practice the piano 8 hours alone. But I had to finish the degree. So I finished the degree, and I was like, I'm going to run a symphony orchestra. I'm going to be a leader, right? And that was, like, my first foray into knowing I wanted to be in some leadership role. And it never happens that way. So I had several jobs, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward over the course of my career. And then I got more into the entrepreneurial arena when I was working for Pat Black, actually, and he wanted to launch a nonprofit called the Idea Fund. So we called it the Idea Fund, and I ran it, but it was a entrepreneurial nonprofit that supported early stage entrepreneurs with a focus on women, minority, veterans. So that was like really interesting to me. But over that time, I had run for office a couple of times and really was invested in my community.
I know, I voted for her, by the way.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. And my husband ran for office.
Yeah, and I voted for him.
Oh, thank you. And I'll never run for office
And
again.
neither of them got in, unfortunately, to the detriment of our city, I'm sure.
Yeah. So after that, it was actually when I was working for him that I had lost my last election sort of thing, and Rob had lost, and I had thought, I kind of want to put my money where my mouth was, because when we were running, I was like, I want to see investment in the downtown. So we decided, capitalizing on the things that I had done throughout the course of my life. I had been in hospitality, I had done a ton of event planning, I was in sales and all that type of stuff, and I was like, okay, I know I can probably figure out how to open. My initial thought was to open like a private club for professionals to go to, and then your ideas never really work out the way you originally want them to.
Ever.
Yeah, and they end up evolving. So it ended up being a bar and restaurant, but I didn't want it to be a typical bar and restaurant. Like, I wanted Erie to have something slightly different. So we went the Speakeasy route, just to have
Which
something.
I love. The whole bookcase opens thing and you walk in. It's so cool.
It's
such
really
a cool vibe.
And that was Rob's part, my husband. He literally,
You wouldn't guess it if you met this guy either.
Yeah, we have thousands of first edition books in our home. They are everywhere.
Exactly.
They're everywhere. Like, I need a library.
He's that typical kind of like nerdy little guy he's so smart and technical, like you would not guess.
Yeah.
He was gonna be
He's
like
a big historian, like into all this stuff.
Speakeasy.
Yeah.
Mogul. It's so cool.
Speakeasy mogul.
He is.
Yeah,
in Erie,
right.
he's a mogul.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what, catapulted me into that arena, was just kind of saying, hey, I've been out there talking about our community, let's get investment. And so
I love that.
Thanks.
I love that. Putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like I've done too, because I get frustrated when people tell me what they think, and I know you've heard this, what they think I should do with my business.
Oh, yes.
They come in and they're like, you should do this, and you should be a part of the community like this. And I'm like, you should do something. What do you do?
Right.
I'm already doing something, and I'm doing something within my capacity, my skill set, my comfort level, like, I'm doing something.
Yeah.
So y'all go out there and put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
You know?
Everybody wants something different, but no, like, a lot of people won't actually go out and do it.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So if you don't want to put your money there, don't put your mouth there either. There's
Well,
a lesson for today.
I think that's a long time coming. I don't think we're going to see that for a while.
For a while.
Yeah.
So really, what was that kind of aha moment that said, I can go, and I know you did both. You were working a job and running this business.
Yeah.
So, and you're transitioning it into full just business
Yes.
ownership, entrepreneurship. I know you have like greater goals and stuff that we're going to get to. But what was kind of that aha, like you the catalyst that said, I'm going to jump into this, and now you've come out of actually working a full-time job because there's something has evolved, something has changed. I know what that is, but I want you to tell the listeners what that is. So about the grant that you received and the business development that you're continuing to do.
The aha moment originally was, I ultimately knew I wanted to work for myself. Like, it's just one of those things that you know, and not everybody is molded this way, but there were a lot of things I wanted to do throughout the course of my career that I felt stunted by, that I couldn't do, and I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just take all ownership of it, right? Like, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day,
Because you're not afraid of the bad and the ugly.
Right.
You know?
Right. We don't like it,
Right.
but we take it.
Yeah.
So then, but I knew I also didn't want to just own a restaurant also. So I'm like, how else can I evolve?
Same. I don't want to just own a coffee shop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I, it was actually pre-pandemic. This was such a silly idea. I went to the team and I was like, hey guys, let's come up with a confectionery company that creates candies that are cocktails. Like, they mimic cocktails from the Prohibition era. Because I had seen, I don't know if you are familiar with the company Sugarfina. They had come up with these little gummy bears that were like champagne bears and all these other different
I've heard of those. Yeah.
They're really, really good. And they're really cute, and it's very nichey, but they were at like Nordstrom and all these high-end things. And I was like, maybe this is something I can do on the side. And I literally bought everything to make gummy candy bears. We did this several times at the bar, and we had them served with our cocktails, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is cute, but no.
It's not making any extra money at the end of the day.
No.
And that's what matters.
Yeah. But what was funny is I had actually filed an LLC called Blind Tiger back in that year, in 2018.
Okay.
Because that was going to be they were going to be Prohibition Bears by Blind Tiger Confections. So anyways, that died, and COVID happened, right?
Yeah.
And during COVID, as you well know, you were not allowed to sell alcohol in the state of Pennsylvania,
Right.
To go. So
Right.
we had to, and our bar was known for our cocktails. At the time, 90% of our sales were bar sales.
Oh yeah,
when they
they're
shut down.
extremely unique cocktails. Like, I've never seen anything else in Erie.
Thanks.
How you guys, and I'm all about crafted. I love my crafted coffee. I
Yes.
love crafted cocktails.
Thank you.
So that's
Our team's
the number one
amazing.
thing I love about your place.
I don't know what I would have done without Lizzie and Sean. I mean, they've been there from the onset, and they've been remarkable. So.
You're blessed to
Yes,
have
very
long-term
much.
employees.
Yes, yes.
Doesn't happen all the time, people.
No, it doesn't. So during that time, we started bottling non-alcoholic versions of them, which could have been a mixer or could have been alone. And I went back, just off the top of my head, I was like, you know what, maybe we can bottle these and sell them. Like, I don't really know what flips that switch, but it's like one day you just wake up and you're like, the idea you've had like 2 years ago, all of a sudden now seems like an idea that could actually work.
Yeah.
So it evolved, and I went to Lizzie and I said, Lizzie, what if we did the same thing we were talking about? We come up with classic Prohibition drinks, and you come up with the recipes that we can do, so we can, at the time she was bottling them herself or ourselves, and she would, they would last for like 7 to 10 days, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And then I just started reaching out to everybody that I knew in the arena, which wasn't many people at that time.
Right.
But like forcing myself onto others, and then I found a beverage engineer, and I took those recipes to her, and she was able to take them and make them like shelf stable. But then the whole process then begins, right?
And you had to learn.
You have to learn everything.
Crazy
right,
process.
including the fact that like
there's literally a science in everything.
there's a science in everything. And in this particular one, the way she created our beverage, it's a hot fill quick pasteurization process, right? You'd think any co-packer in the world, if you've ever bottled anything in your life, oh, they can do that.
Right.
No, like The wineries and everything that bottle their own stuff, not the same type of fill. Like I had people
Okay.
be like, "Why don't you talk to so and so or so and so?"
Yeah, there's a bottle with liquid inside of it.
Right, yeah. So,
not the same.
and then every co-packer out there wants minimums of like 5,000 to 10,000 gallons before you're even out of the gate, before you had commitments. So
And you're like, yeah, let me take this product that is unknown, never heard of before, and let me just buy 10,000 gallons of
right,
that.
let me invest $30,000 into product that may or may not get on the shelves. And then I lucked out serendipitously, which I think most of us have these things in our lives.
There's that, that opportunity moment.
Yeah, and I had a colleague of mine reach out and say, hey, I know this guy in Cleveland. Why don't I connect you to? And then he ended up having a company that could do the exact fill that I needed them to do, and in the same bottle that I wanted it to produce in, and at a very low minimum. So it took some time to get there, but you know, it's still taking a lot of time to get there, but it's going.
So, and I know you got the Ben Franklin grant, which was a huge help.
And to be honest, I don't know that I could have launched it without those funds, right? Like when I opened my bar, you take out a loan, right? You put some money in, you take out a loan. And I didn't want to do that this time, at least at the onset. I'm like, I don't want to take out another loan to do this product. And on a whim, I'm like, I didn't even think it would be a good fit, but it just, with the manufacturing component, and I think the ultimate end goal, you know, which is to have it produced here, it ended up being something that fit really, really well. And that was a blessing. I mean, it helped us get our labels, it helped us get our first batch of product, it helped us build our website so we could sell them online, like things I wouldn't have been able to do in such a short time.
Right, yeah, like taking a 3-year process and making a 6-month process instead.
Right.
And that was awesome, and for as much as Rebecca's done for this city, like, you definitely deserve it, it's worth it, and I hope it's going to boom. So that definitely brings me to the next question. Where do you envision this part of the company? Where do you envision the bar? Is the bar just simply a platform to grow the Blind Tiger side of it? Like, where do you see this going? Or even just your entrepreneurial path? What do you kind of envision for the future? Like, whatever, the next year, the next 10 years, like, what do you think is kind of the trajectory for where you're headed?
So I tend to think big, right? So I just, you know, when this was at the onset of this, I go, Rob, I want this for Erie. I want Erie to be the home base, and I want people to know it because Erie, right?
Right.
But I want it out of Erie. Like, I want people. So I hired some consultants that have been in the industry, in the liquor industry, for a million years, and they work with retail and distributors all over the country. So they are getting me into the distribution retail network in other areas. Like, as of today, I have a commitment with probably about 16 counties in Southwest Pennsylvania, but I have potential commitments from New Jersey and Delaware and everything. So what they'll do is then go out and take the product and sell it to bars and restaurants.
Okay.
Right? Because one of the things that I think is nice about this particular product, whether it's non-alcoholic or as a mixer, it's ready to drink, right? So it eliminates the prep work and everything else that's tied to it. So to a bar that doesn't typically make those cocktails, but maybe wants to offer them, there's still really good margins. And it's an opportunity to get people to have a unique drink that.
As someone who had a micro bar for a while in her coffee shop, I could see, like, that would have been super helpful for me, because having to maintain all of these ingredients, and they only last so long, and health department rules and stuff like that, it was financially exhausting and time exhausting, and getting the supplies, and me kind of being the only one running everything in the show, it was very difficult for me. So I think if I had something like that, it would have totally changed the dynamic for what I was trying to operate. Because I wanted craft cocktail. I wanted like 7 ingredients in this thing, but to maintain 7 ingredients on my bar was very difficult.
Sure.
So I definitely see the niche having, you know, personal experience in that. I think that's a phenomenal idea. So is this something that you think you'll be able to distribute? Like, we in Pennsylvania, I don't know how every state is, but I know we're kind of strict on liquor and stuff. But since this is non-alcoholic, will this be in liquor stores? Because I know our liquor store carries non-alcoholic mixers.
Right.
Is this something that you can carry in grocery stores? Is that where you want to go?
Yeah, I really would ideally, I'd like to be in retail. So I'd love to be in the Wegmans and the Whole Foods and places like that.
Yeah.
Whole Foods Co-op here has it now, and then Country Fair just committed. So they have 5 locations. Awesome. They just started carrying it in.
Country Fair is like our local, you know, Shell station. They're all over the place around here. Yeah.
So it's getting it, you know, and then like the casino committed to putting it on their menu. The Sheraton has it on their menu. So it's both from a bar and restaurant standpoint, both an on and off shelf sort of idea, right? Like that's my hope, is to get it out there. But ultimately, bring it back here and manufacture the product here, and maybe create an opportunity for other people who want to do something similar or get into that arena, so that there's opportunity here for them to build it.
That's amazing. I love that. So are you already bottling, like manufacturing in Erie?
We're manufacturing in Cleveland
Okay.
because we don't have the capability of doing it
To
here.
do it
There
here,
isn't anybody here that can do this
Yet.
particular process.
Yes.
Right. We do have a couple of really great bottlers and great companies. It's funny. It's like they either don't do the bottle size I wanted or the hot fill process that I
Right.
wanted. Like, so it's just, and it's a game. Like, it's learning all aspects all
yeah.
along.
Well, Cleveland's not too far. They're our neighbor, so that
Yes.
is still maintaining a really local feel for us. We're strategically located between 3 major metropolitan areas. We got Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and so we're this little hub of a modge podge of these cities, because people really do, when they kind of want to get out of that major city feel, they come to Erie, because then they're still
Right.
really connected to their families and other major metropolitan features that we don't necessarily have in Erie, yet again.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I ever want a skyscraper. Like, I love our little non-skyscraper city. So I
Because you
think
could go an hour and a half to find one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a short trip to go and have that experience. So through this whole process, not just the beverage process, but going from corporate to business ownership. And how long have you been running Room 33?
A little over 3 years.
I was gonna say you're kind of past that 3-year marker,
Yeah.
and our goal here is to help out listeners with the first 3 years of entrepreneurship and what it takes to get into it, what they can expect in those first 3 years. So if you could take an objective standpoint and look at the process that you've gone from an employee to now an entrepreneur and employer, what are some of the major obstacles, but the greatest observations that you've made? Some of the positive ones, some of the negative ones, and if you did have some major obstacles, how did you overcome those?
Sure. So prior to my journey into entrepreneurship, one of the things that I knew I wanted to take with me was people don't leave jobs, they leave leaders, right? Or they leave employers, I think, for the most part.
I love that.
So I think it
Yes.
was imperative to me that whatever I did moving forward, if I had a team with me, I wanted to take care of the team. So even during times of COVID, we did more than, we paid our team more, even though we had less going out there at that point. Any little thing that we could do, and although I was still dedicated to another job, I tried to do as much as we could do to take care of them, because that's the most important, asset to me. When I opened a restaurant, I didn't know anything about, kitchens or any of the technical
And especially
things.
you've had really great employees. It's
Yeah.
very, very difficult to replace those people. So
Yeah.
I can understand if you already had an amazing team in place, you don't want to get rid of them,
Right, right.
or lose them to another place or whatever. So that was a really strategic move, even though it might have been financially hard at that time.
Yeah, and so that was one of the things that I would tell anybody is make sure you surround yourself with the right people, as and we all have hires that don't end up working out or whatever, but at least at the onset you want to be able to trust the person you're working with, and because you don't know what you don't know. Any entrepreneur is still getting in beyond the scope of what they're aware
And
of.
at every level, you were already an
Right.
entrepreneur. You started bottling up your
Right.
beverages, and now it's a whole arena of stuff you had to
Right,
learn. It
right.
is constantly a learning experience.
It's constantly a learning experience, and just to be open to that. And then there was so many failures along the way. There still are so many failures, and there's a lot of frustration. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're very alone in the process.
Right.
You don't have that team to kind of build you up, when you're first starting that product, right? They aren't there on the 24-hour days that it's living in your brain.
Yes.
So you really have to be able to be malleable and move with things as they happen, and just know that all the bad stuff that comes with it doesn't mean it's not supposed to work.
Right. And that's what I love. I recently, having talked with Tiffany Colazzo, during the show, I came up with the idea of failing up. I was like, it's okay to F up.
Yeah.
Fail up. And
That's
then you
great.
keep trying,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
find the next path, the next way, whatever, the next person that comes along, until you are able to make another step forward.
Yeah.
So it's okay that you took a couple steps back every now and then. You
Oh,
kept
gosh.
making a step forward
Yeah.
at some point, and then eventually those steps become greater,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you stop
hopefully, yeah.
taking as many back.
Right.
Not that you won't ever take more back,
Right.
but you keep making more steps forward,
Yeah.
as you continue on going.
Yes.
So maybe some of the most positive observations that you had through that experience, what would you say they were?
I mean, there are people out there who want to see you succeed. I mean, and I think and they're people that you don't typically think of, right? Like,
Agree.
if you're part of your journey, people come out of the woodwork and you're like, wow. And that's what kind of keeps you going, I think, sometimes, because you're like, okay, well, this person who has had no direct impact in my life is wants
Didn't
to see
know you existed or knew that I existed.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you do it for those reasons. And just the support, I mean, family support is critical too. Like, that was very positive experience for me along the way. But honestly, like, everything that I've learned has been a positive experience for me. So, like, even if I didn't want to learn it,
Right.
it's
Even
good
if
knowledge.
it was hard, and in the moment I cried myself to sleep, it was still a positive learning experience.
Yeah.
I feel the exact same way. And that's, I always say this is a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
Your emotions are up and down and up and down. And so it's really good to have a support system. I'm thankful I have a really good familial support system as
Yes.
well. So if you don't have friends or entrepreneurs or something, that you can lean on, and you're so well networked in this town, and I think a lot of people confuse being networked with being supported.
Right.
They're very different things.
They are, yes.
And I'm sure you experienced this when you opened Room 33. I thought that network was suddenly going to be super supportive of my business.
I experienced that when I ran for office.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my first foray into realizing your network of people aren't necessarily your supporters of people.
Yes.
Yeah. So I had at least an understanding of that when I opened, and honestly, I felt that it was going to be very critical and hard in the first year, because that's kind of like, for as many people that want to see you succeed, there are as many that want to see you fail.
Yeah. Secretly, they don't
Yes.
necessarily come out and say that,
Right.
but yeah, in the back of their mind, they're like. I think it's more born out of jealousy, like, for their own life, they're afraid to take that step, or they just don't want to see someone else go where they couldn't go, and I think it's more of an internalization process. I mean, some people voice it, but for the most part, I think it's an internalization, that people have where they might not even know why.
Right.
But, and a lot of the Erie, historical, the vibe, I want to say, I don't even want to say the mindset, but the vibe of the city was just really downgrading, on what we can build, what we can offer. And I know the two of us have really tried to push forward the positive of everything that the city has to offer and what it can be and how we can grow. And we've networked in, the same groups and stuff like that for years. So there's a really hardcore of people who see the vision for what Erie can become.
Yep.
And I want to kind of dive into your brain a little bit and say, if you could think of like the one or two things that you wish you had known in taking that leap from being an employee to being an entrepreneur, if there's something that you could have known, what do you think that would have been for you?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that I think entrepreneurs generally do is take things in stride, right? So I knew there was a lot of things I didn't know. I guess knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect when you first launch anything is probably really imperative, because like a lot of people want to wait until it's absolutely perfect before they get something out there. Well, you don't have to do that when you want to start.
And I feel like you're a preparer. You're the kind of person who really does have their shit in order. You know what I mean? Before you launch
I do a really good job.
That's the persona I get for you, and your husband as well. Like I've worked with Rebecca in my different businesses and stuff, and so I feel like you're the more relaxed one out of the two of you. But that you guys really kind of go into things strategically, and not quite on a whim.
Right.
So I love that you actually bring that up as a point. Like, it didn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be perfect.
It doesn't need to be perfect. Right.
Yeah.
And that's really hard, because when we first opened, there was so much more I wanted to do in the restaurant. And I would walk in there every day and I'm like, oh, there's like, and it would frustrate me. But people didn't really take that into account. Like, they don't see the same things.
They don't see your vision.
Right.
They just see what's created.
Right.
They don't have an expectation of the future vision or how the bigger vision should have been.
Yes.
I'm in the same boat with the cafe. I'm still remodeling, and I'm like, if I remodel this place one more time, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Your place is darling. Out of the gate, it was darling. So.
Right, and that's your perspective. But I was just like, there is 500 things I haven't done.
Yeah.
And I already knew we'd have to adjust, but what I had available and the resources I had at this time, this is how I can start.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so we're still in the process of growing and redesigning and stuff like that as we've grown. And I think you'll probably be in that position as well as you keep growing. And so she had a cigar area.
Yeah.
That was a part of the original intention.
Yeah.
And due to unexpected circumstances, you had to get rid of that and pivot the actual design and idea of the business as well.
Yeah. And for as many people that wanted that, there were equally as many people that didn't. So it's just, you can't, I think it's just being okay with the fact that you can't know everything going into everything. Like,
right.
You look back and you say, oh, I wish I would have known this or whatever. Instead of that, just know that you don't know what you don't know, and it's okay.
And that you're open and willing to continue learning.
Yes.
And to learn, even from those people that you're saying, you don't expect to come out of the woodwork. They'll kind of see you and say, hey, I want to help you and support you.
Yes.
And I've had lots of people do that for me. They're like, you probably don't know me or the experiences, but I do have some wisdom to share for you. And I love when people come out and you just have to be very open and willing, because sometimes it's not easy to hear. But a lot of those, as long as you know, your gut will know that it's a well-intentioned person, that you can take that advice and probably avoid some kind of pitfall, obstacle, or whatever.
Sure.
Or maybe get through one a little bit easier. Because sometimes that's when they show up, is when you're actually going through the problem.
Yeah,
and you're like, crap. And someone's like, oh, you should have done this, but now that you're in it, you can probably get out of it, as best as possible this way.
Right.
So if somebody listening is just starting to decide that they want to become an entrepreneur, or maybe they've just started and they're in their first year, we want to make sure that these people have tools for success. And there's so much to know, and hopefully a lot of these podcasts will cover a lot of that. But if you could identify something, you sat down with one-on-one with somebody and they said, I want to do this, I want to be an entrepreneur, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them to be as successful as they could be?
I mean, I really tell them to do their research and do their homework. So a lot of times entrepreneurs will come to me or you or whatever, and they won't have even looked up anything what they want to start doing.
Yes.
Like, there's very basic things. Make sure if you're going to seek out mentorship or like a colleague or something, go to them with at least enough knowledge to show that you're actually actively pursuing or interested in what you're actually going to pursue. Because I see that there's a lot of people that don't do that. When a simple Google search would have answered a lot of those things. And then, the financial element for things was probably one of my weakest spots, right? And I didn't realize, the SBDC was really great in the process.
I was going to ask
both,
if they helped you out with that at all.
Oh, gosh, with the restaurant and with Blind Tiger. And, in your head, you're like, how do you figure out these projections, right? How do I know how much I'm actually going to make in a year or whatever, right?
Exactly.
But there's a method to the madness, and they are really, really good. So, I mean, and they were free to work with. And so I would highly recommend them, or wherever, you're...
A local resource, like the Small Business Development Center.
Right.
Every city has one, or if you're in a small town, go to the nearest city that has some support. And there is definitely always online support for those things.
Yes, yeah. But I definitely say, find one person that can at least stick by you throughout the process, and the financial element of things. Like, those are the two key components. Everything else can be learned. I mean, and in some people, the financial thing may come easy to them, but for me, for somebody who's never been in that industry,
most entrepreneurs, that's not the easy part.
Right.
I had in my first podcast been talking about financing and finding alternate sources of financing. And even like you got the grant, and even for the Tipsy Bean, I received grants. Pandemic wasn't a terrible thing for me. I mean, I think the restaurant industry received support that it's never received before.
Absolutely.
And so if you were positioned in the right way to take advantage of that, even still, the SBA is still giving out money for new starts. So I think now is a great time to consider starting a business as well, because there are funds available that weren't historically available for startups. That was the hardest thing, was finding grant funding, and because you would just think, oh, I'm a female entrepreneur, there's a grant for me. They're few and far between, and they're really hard to get because the market is saturated with everyone applying for them.
Right.
So, and speaking from experience, I've applied for all of them 100 times, right? So this is actually kind of a great time to consider starting a business.
I mean, Blind Tiger evolved during the pandemic.
During a pandemic.
So,
I know, that's why I love talking to these entrepreneurs that are like starting something during a pandemic. Like, what a time to think about creating or recreating or rethinking your business.
When our economy is down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, when's the right time? Now.
Right.
Now's the right time. There is no right or wrong time.
Right.
There's just a time that you get started going into that.
Yeah.
And I agree. People just don't do their research. And I was just telling you before we started recording, I'm like, I give people a half hour and they come to me and they ask me some questions and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to answer any of those because they're not relevant to what you need to know right now. You need to be asking yourself these questions. Go to the SBDC, go talk to someone at SCORE, find these resources of people who can actually give you the information. You're not looking at the right questions,
Right. Right.
And I think a big part of it is knowing your market.
That is the biggest part of it, and that's something that people don't focus on as much. When you say, "Oh, who do you want this to serve, or who do you want to sell this to?" Everybody. No,
it cannot be that
it
wide.
It cannot be everybody, and you don't want to be everything to everybody.
Correct.
Because then you'll never.
8 billion people we're headed towards.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So knowing your market is critical. I mean, and because it helps you at least start to launch a pathway forward, and that is definitely one thing I would tell people, that no matter what, know that before you launch anything.
Yeah. No, and just because it serves in another market, it might not serve in your town.
Right.
I used to own a business in Girard and in Meadville, and those are both small towns, but very different small towns.
Yeah.
And when I would advertise on the radio in one, it didn't work at all in the other. And then vice versa. Billboards worked great here, they were terrible there. So and then we're talking these towns are 45 minutes apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had totally different demographics.
Of course.
How the people thought, what they bought into, what they believed. So much of that is cultural, even within a small town era. Even though we're a city, we do not have a major metropolitan vibe.
Right. No, we don't.
Erie is a tough market. We are some tough cookies.
People used to say if you could make it here, you could
you
literally
make
it
anywhere.
Right.
Anywhere. Which I'd like to say, we are obviously some of the toughest motherfucker entrepreneurs because we've made it here in more than one way. So obviously we're doing something right. And I feel like that kind of empowers me going into the other things that I want to accomplish as an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a bolster, as much as people might be down on our town, I'm like, it's a bolster when you get it right.
It is.
And you can actually serve the people that historically have been harder to serve or convinced to serve, you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. And I think that's one of the major advantages of Erie is its market size too. My husband came from DC. He would have never been able to run for office. He would have never started a business there.
Right.
There are opportunities here
Yes.
that you can't find in major markets.
Yes. And people ask me, why Erie? And I'm like, well, because, I tell everybody I'm from California. And they're like, why would you start a business here? I'm like, do you know how hard it is to start a business in California? Yeah. It's a hugely saturated market.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a coffee shop every 3 doors down,
right.
Erie has the ability to be affordable to start up. There's a lot of opportunity right now for female entrepreneurs, minority entrepreneurs. There's a lot of open real estate. There's so many benefits to being able to. So don't discount your town and don't think it maybe has to be an online business. If you're looking at a brick and mortar and you have a small town, you can still be pretty successful.
Yeah.
And if your goal is online, God bless you, but also find a niche. Don't think you're just going to market to the billions of the people around the world because they're all on the internet. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You've got to hone in and find something you're solving a problem for small bars.
Right.
Right. So
you've
got to solve some kind of a problem for somebody.
Yeah.
And we're trying to focus on the first 3 years of business in this podcast. You've got to find something that's missing from somewhere and be the solution for that.
Yeah.
And that's how you'll be successful within that market. So speaking of empowerment, I get the benefit of being on a panel with Rebecca in just a few weeks. We're going to be July 9th through 12th. We're going to be at the, I don't want to get this wrong. So this is the Women's Marketplace Expo. And this is going to be July 9th, starting at 6 p.m. We're on the empowerment panel at the Bayfront Convention Center in Erie. So If you want to check that out online, you can find that on Facebook. You can get tickets for it. They are available right now. If you're in our area or in our surrounding area, you can come and check it out. We're going to be with some really accomplished women, other entrepreneurs, and I'm extremely excited about this. Just to be around so many other inspiring female entrepreneurs.
Yes.
I think it's something we don't do a lot with each other.
Correct.
I know we haven't connected. You
Right,
know, I know
right.
there was a pandemic going on, but we haven't connected because we're always just working
Right.
18 hours a day,
Right,
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
So I think it's imperative that we do these things. Find the time, make the time
Agreed.
to actually go out. And now that things are opening up and conventions and stuff like that are opening up, make a point to surround yourself. And if you're just getting started into business, don't wait until you're in business to connect with these
Right.
types of people and go see these things. Start feeding yourself now. Take that time, kind of like research.
Yep.
Research one-on-one with people. Have conversations with other women, with other business owners who are doing this.
Right. Have those network. I mean, have the network. Even if they're not necessarily going to turn into your supporters, that network will still help you serve as a resource as you're developing your business.
Right. To grow and to learn from. And you have to kind of put yourself out there. I know I did
Yeah.
this. I'm like, hey, can I get your contact information? Here's my contact information in case I have any questions that you might be able to answer. I have never run into somebody who has said no.
No, me either. Yeah. And
Ever.
yeah. And I've had a lot of no's in my life, but whenever, just when asking for contact information, people are usually
Yeah,
supportive.
when you're like,
Yeah.
hey, if I ever have an issue that I want to bounce off of you, do you mind if I shoot you an
Right.
email? I've never had anybody say no to me
Yeah.
because we're the kind of people who we don't have a ton of time, but we can obviously help answer a question or give you a
Yes.
quick direction. And if your question requires more information, we know resources
Right.
that
know
we
where to
utilize.
send you.
I'm
Yes.
like, I
Yeah.
can't help you with that, but here's the resource
Yep.
that
Exactly.
you're going to want to use that I used.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's a wonderful connection to have in any of these events that you might go to. Just put yourself out there. Don't be afraid. And I know a lot of people are just scared to make that introduction. Yeah. Or you know what? People act like I'm way up here on some freaking platform
No,
that doesn't even exist. And I'm like, no, it's just me struggling day to day, like figuring my business out still.
Well, you were on TV.
You know, you're like,
so.
okay, I am kind of.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
am
there
kind
is
of a TV
that,
star,
yeah.
so maybe. No. Don't be afraid to go up to anybody. We are all just people, right? Just human beings, and we're entrepreneurs figuring it out. So yeah, don't be afraid to talk to anybody, because
Agreed.
everyone will say, I've got time. So
And if they don't, you don't want their time anyways.
true.
So
Yeah, if they say no, first off, what else?
it's better for you. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
You learned early.
For a one
Yeah.
no, there's 100 yeses.
Yeah.
So let that be an encouragement.
And for
to
the
all of
100
you.
no's you might get in your career, that one yes will be
Change
like
your world.
tenfold
Yes.
what all those no's were.
Yes.
Yes.
On the converse side of
Yes,
that, it's
yes,
so true.
yes.
It's so true. I absolutely love that. You've been very insightful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being here and for everything that you're doing for our city and
Likewise.
for
Likewise.
female empowerment and
Likewise.
entrepreneurship. So I look forward to both of our growth within this town and individually as well. So it's been fun kind of sharing our journeys
Yes.
alongside each other.
Yeah.
So sure we'll have you back in the future if you don't mind.
No.
Because we're going to want to know about all the stuff that's
yeah,
happening
hopefully
and
it'll
developing.
continue in trajectory.
It's
upward.
going to.
Yeah.
It's going to. It's not
good.
even a question.
Yeah.
It's going to.
Thanks.
I know your tenacity. I've seen it. It's going to happen.
Thanks.
So, all right, until next time everybody, I hope you have a wonderful, prosperous and productive week. Peace out.